Welcome to my channel, Night Shift Investigation, true crime stories hidden behind normal lives.
We know about the money. Get out of this house, Maya.
You're not touching a cent of that $2.5 million.
How dare you? I am his wife.
Maya Caldwell lived a life that most people never noticed. She worked long night shifts at a small medical clinic and slept during the day in a rented room close to the city's older neighborhoods. Her routine was quiet and predictable. One winter evening, she was assigned to check on an elderly patient named Arthur Hale, who had recently been discharged from the hospital. Arthur lived alone in a narrow house at the end of a silent street, a place lined with security cameras installed by the city years earlier after a series of break-ins. Those cameras would later become important, though no one knew that at the time. Arthur was frail and struggled to walk without support. His memory often drifted, and he needed constant reminders for medicine, meals, and basic care. Maya began visiting him after work, first for short check-ins, then for longer hours as his condition worsened. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, Maya became the only consistent presence in his life. Neighbors rarely saw Arthur outside anymore, but they saw Maya every day. CCTV footage showed her arriving early in the morning, leaving briefly for supplies, and returning again before sunset. The pattern never changed. Arthur had no visitors. No friends came by. No family appeared, even during medical emergencies. Records later showed that his relatives lived in other states and had not contacted him for years. Maya handled everything alone. She cleaned the house, cooked soft meals, managed medical appointments, and stayed awake on nights when Arthur's health declined. Her own life slowly faded into the background. She reduced her clinic hours and used her savings to cover small expenses when Arthur's insurance failed. Despite his weak condition, Arthur remained observant. He noticed Maya's consistency, her patience, and the way she never rushed her duties. Over time, he trusted her completely. Financial documents later revealed that Arthur quietly monitored his accounts during this period. He had old investments, untouched for decades, growing silently while he lived modestly. No signs of wealth were visible in his daily life. The house remained plain, and Arthur never spent beyond basic needs. CCTV cameras around the street recorded countless ordinary moments. Maya helping Arthur into a car for hospital visits. Maya carrying grocery bags. Maya sitting on the front steps late at night, exhausted but still alert. There were no signs of conflict, neglect, or urgency. Everything appeared calm and controlled. To the outside world, this was just a caregiver doing her job. What no one realized was that these quiet years were shaping a decision that would later cause chaos. Arthur's trust in Maya grew deeper as his trust in others faded completely. His relatives remained absent, unaware or uninterested in his declining health. The cameras continued recording, capturing a story that looked simple on the surface but was slowly becoming something far more complicated. Arthur Hale had spent most of his life avoiding attention. Even as his health weakened, his habits never changed. He dressed simply, paid bills on time, and kept his affairs private. Maya believed he survived on a small pension and limited savings, nothing more. There were no signs of luxury in the house, no expensive furniture, no new electronics. Everything looked old but carefully maintained. This illusion of modesty was something Arthur had built intentionally over decades. Behind that quiet life was a financial history few people knew about. Arthur had invested early in several manufacturing companies that later merged into major corporations. He never sold his shares, even during market crashes. Bank records would later reveal that his accounts had grown into millions, untouched, and steadily increasing. He rarely checked them in person, relying on mailed statements that he stored in a locked drawer. Maya never opened that drawer and never asked questions. As Arthur's health declined further, his thinking became sharper about certain matters. Medical evaluations showed his memory faded at times, but his decision-making remained clear during structured moments. He began reviewing old documents on quiet afternoons, often asking Maya to bring files or mail from specific drawers. CCTV cameras inside the living room captured him sitting upright, reading slowly, taking breaks, and continuing again. There was no confusion in his actions during these periods. Months before his death, Arthur contacted a legal service that specialized in home visits for elderly clients. The appointment was scheduled quietly, and the visitor stayed less than an hour. According to official logs, Arthur requested updates to his will and asset distribution plan. He named Maya Caldwell as the primary beneficiary, assigning her ownership of his savings, investments, and remaining property. The total value reached approximately $2.5 million. The reason was simple in the documents: consistent care and personal trust. Arthur made no attempt to inform his family. Records showed no outgoing calls or messages to them during this time. His relatives, who had once benefited from his financial support years earlier, had slowly disappeared from his life. Arthur had noted this absence in personal notes later found among his papers. Those notes described gratitude toward Maya and disappointment toward people who shared his blood but not his time. The legal documents were signed, witnessed, and filed correctly. Copies were stored in multiple locations, including a private records facility. CCTV footage showed Arthur sealing envelopes himself and placing them in storage. Maya was present in the house, but never interacted with the process. She continued her routine, unaware that her life was about to change in a way she could never imagine. The fortune remained hidden until Arthur's death. No lifestyle changes followed the signing of the will. Maya continued working, continued budgeting, and continued caring for Arthur with the same attention as before. The quiet house held a secret that would soon attract attention from people who had stayed away for years. The money existed, the paperwork was real, and the consequences were waiting. The night Arthur Hale died was calm and uneventful, at least on the surface. The weather was clear, the streets silent, and the house dark except for a single light in the living room. CCTV cameras outside showed Maya arriving earlier than usual, carrying medical supplies and groceries. Inside, Arthur appeared weaker than before, moving slowly and breathing with effort. Medical records later confirmed that his condition had reached a critical stage in the weeks leading up to that night. Shortly after midnight, CCTV footage captured Maya stepping out onto the front porch and making an emergency call. She remained visible to the camera the entire time, pacing slowly, then standing still near the door. Emergency services arrived within minutes. Paramedics entered the house while Maya waited outside, her movements calm and controlled. There was no sign of panic, only urgency. The response was professional and recorded clearly from multiple angles. Arthur was pronounced dead inside the house. Doctors later confirmed that the cause was natural, linked to long-term medical conditions already documented in his health records. There were no marks on his body, no signs of neglect, and no evidence of forced medication or improper care. Everything aligned with what had been expected given his age and condition. Maya cooperated fully, answering questions and providing medical histories without hesitation. The house remained quiet after the authorities left. CCTV footage showed Maya sitting alone on the front steps as dawn approached. She stayed there for hours, unmoving. Neighbors later stated that they had never seen Arthur's family during emergencies before, and this time was no different. No relatives arrived that night or the following day. Maya handled the immediate arrangements alone, following standard procedures. 3 days later, the silence ended. A black SUV was recorded pulling up outside the house. 2 men and a woman stepped out, all unfamiliar to the neighborhood. They entered the house with legal representatives. These were Arthur's relatives, arriving quickly once official notices were issued. Their timing raised quiet concern among neighbors who had never seen them visit Arthur while he was alive. Inside the house, the atmosphere shifted. The family began reviewing documents, questioning timelines, and requesting access to storage areas. Maya, still grieving and exhausted, complied with every request. She believed the legal process would be straightforward. She had nothing to hide and no reason to fear what was written in Arthur's will. Whispers began circulating almost immediately. The family suggested that Arthur had been confused near the end. They hinted that Maya had too much influence over him. None of these claims matched medical evaluations or recorded footage, but the suggestions alone were enough to change the tone of the situation. What had been a quiet passing suddenly became a matter of interest. The CCTV cameras continued recording everything. They showed the family entering and leaving, spending hours inside the house, accessing files, and removing boxes. What they did not show was any care, concern, or acknowledgement of the years Arthur spent alone before Maya arrived. The focus had shifted completely, and the calm certainty of natural closure began to unravel into something far more complicated. The legal process began slowly, then turned heavy and confusing. Maya believed the paperwork Arthur had completed would speak for itself. She submitted the documents to the court, expecting verification and a routine transfer of assets. Instead, the response was delayed. Arthur's family filed an immediate objection, claiming the will was invalid. They argued that Arthur had been mentally unstable and unable to make clear decisions during the final year of his life. This claim alone was enough to freeze the entire estate. Medical reports were requested and reviewed. Doctors confirmed that Arthur suffered from physical weakness and memory lapses, but remained capable of understanding legal decisions. Despite this, the family's legal team pushed a different narrative. They presented selective medical notes, removing context and emphasizing moments of confusion. The court allowed extended hearings, giving both sides time to submit evidence. What should have been simple turned into a long battle. Maya's legal support was limited. She could not afford a powerful legal team and relied on basic representation. Each hearing drained her savings further. Arthur's family, however, arrived prepared every time, backed by experienced lawyers and financial experts. They questioned Maya's role, her financial background, and even her work schedule. They suggested her care was motivated by personal gain, despite years of recorded evidence showing consistent behavior long before any will was changed. CCTV footage was introduced as supporting material. The recordings showed Maya's daily routine, her presence during emergencies, and her consistent care. The defense dismissed this as meaningless. They argued that routine behavior could not prove intention or honesty. The court accepted this argument, weakening Maya's strongest visual evidence. Then complications appeared. Several key documents were reported missing from the storage facility where Arthur had placed copies of his will. The facility confirmed the documents were logged, but could not explain their disappearance. Without those copies, the original paperwork faced increased scrutiny. The family questioned signatures, timestamps, and witness statements. Every detail became a target. The stress began affecting Maya's health. She struggled to maintain work and attend hearings. Public perception shifted as rumors spread quietly. Some neighbors remained supportive, but others began to doubt her, influenced by the family's accusations. The process moved slowly, allowing suspicion to grow without resolution. Behind closed doors, the family filed additional motions to delay proceedings. Each delay benefited them financially. Investment accounts remained inaccessible, accumulating interest while Maya waited. The longer the case lasted, the more pressure she faced to give up. Settlement offers were hinted at, but never formally presented. What began as a legal review now felt like a trap. Every path forward required resources Maya did not have. The system moved carefully but without urgency, and in that slow movement, control slipped from her hands. The inheritance was still written in ink, but its reality was fading, buried under paperwork, doubt, and calculated delay. As the case dragged on, attention shifted toward a single piece of evidence that could settle everything. Investigators learned that Arthur had installed a small internal camera in the living room months before his death, separate from the city's street cameras. This camera was meant for security and record-keeping. According to logs, it recorded regularly and stored footage on a dedicated hard drive. That footage reportedly showed Arthur reviewing legal documents calmly, with a certified legal witness present. The existence of this recording was mentioned in early court filings, but few people focused on it at first. When Maya's legal team requested access to the footage, problems began immediately. The hard drive was listed in evidence inventory, but it was no longer in the same condition. Officials reported that it had been returned from a private review already damaged and unreadable. There was no clear explanation for how or when this damage occurred. No backup copy was available, despite standard procedures requiring duplication. This sudden loss changed the direction of the case. The family's legal team dismissed the missing footage as irrelevant. They argued that if the recording could not be verified, it could not be trusted. Without visual proof of Arthur's state of mind during the signing of the will, the court leaned further toward uncertainty. Maya's strongest remaining support disappeared overnight. An internal review was announced to investigate the handling of the evidence. The review moved slowly and quietly. Officials concluded that the damage could not be traced to a specific person. No misconduct was officially recorded. The hard drive was returned to storage as non-functional, and the matter was closed without consequences. Meanwhile, financial movements began taking place in the background. Portions of Arthur's assets were temporarily managed by court-appointed trustees. During this period, complex transactions occurred. Money shifted between accounts, fees were charged, and investment structures were adjusted. These actions were legal but reduced the overall value accessible to any future claimant. Maya had no control over these decisions and little understanding of their impact. The family used this period to strengthen their position. They filed additional paperwork, challenging not just the will, but also Maya's right to contest it further. Each filing added cost and time. Maya's savings were nearly gone. She sold personal belongings to continue attending hearings. Her life narrowed to paperwork, waiting rooms, and unanswered questions. Eventually, the court approved a private settlement among Arthur's relatives. The estate was distributed internally, bypassing Maya entirely. She was notified after the decision had been finalized. There was no formal explanation offered to her, only official notices confirming that the matter was closed. The missing footage remained a quiet but powerful absence. It was never recovered, never replaced, and never mentioned again in official statements. What it showed, and how it disappeared, became a silent turning point. With that loss, the truth lost its last clear window, and Maya's fight effectively ended. Years passed after the case was closed, but the consequences followed quietly. Maya left the city where everything had happened and settled in a small town where no one knew her story. She found work again in healthcare, keeping her life simple and distant from anything that reminded her of Arthur Hale. Officially, her name was never linked to wrongdoing. The court records showed no findings against her, yet the outcome of the case remained unchanged. The inheritance was gone, and so was any chance to recover it. Time revealed details that were not visible during the legal battle. A routine financial audit conducted by an international banking authority flagged unusual movements connected to Arthur's former accounts. Large sums had been transferred through layered investment structures shortly after the estate was redistributed. These transactions were complex but technically legal. They led to offshore holdings controlled by companies tied indirectly to Arthur's family. The discovery raised questions, but the statute of limitations had already passed for meaningful action. A brief review was opened by financial regulators. The review focused on compliance rather than intent. Since the transfers followed legal procedures, no charges were filed. The case never returned to court. The findings were recorded, archived, and forgotten by the system. For Maya, it was confirmation of what she had suspected for years but could never prove. The CCTV footage from Arthur Street remained stored in city archives. It showed 3 years of consistency, patience, and care. Those recordings were never disputed, yet they were never enough to change the outcome. The internal camera footage that might have ended all doubt remained lost. No investigation ever explained its disappearance. It existed only as a reference in old documents and memories. Maya never spoke publicly about the case. She declined interviews and avoided attention. She carried no anger, only a quiet sense of loss. Not just for the money, but for the trust that had been broken and the truth that had been ignored. Arthur had intended to reward loyalty and care, but his decision triggered a system that favored power over evidence. In the end, the story faded from public view. Arthur's family continued their lives with secured wealth. Maya continued hers without recognition or compensation. The cameras that once recorded everything remained silent witnesses to a truth that never reached justice. What survived was not a verdict, but a lesson hidden in the footage that no one chose to watch closely enough.